When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the pain, sharp and unforgiving, radiating from my ribs down to my spine like a lightning bolt frozen in place. My throat felt like sandpaper, dry from the breathing tube they had just removed. The hospital room was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor and the faint sound of rain tapping against the window. I blinked slowly, trying to adjust to the fluorescent lighting. My mouth was too dry to speak, but I managed to whisper, "Water." A nurse appeared almost instantly. "You're awake," she said gently. "Don't try to move too much. You've just come out of surgery. You were in a pretty bad car crash." Car crash. The words rang in my head like a bell. I remembered the screech of tires, the sudden jolt, the unbearable impact, and then nothing. "You're very lucky," the nurse added, adjusting my fore. "The airbag saved you from the worst of it, but your ribs are fractured and you had internal bleeding. We had to operate right away." I barely nodded, still piecing things together. Then the door opened. I turned my head, slowly, painfully, and saw them. My mom, Linda, walked in first, her signature tan leather travel bag slung over one shoulder. Behind her was my dad, Gregory, wheeling a medium-sized suitcase. And then came Vanessa, my sister, dressed in an oversized hoodie, dragging the sleek designer luggage I had bought her last Christmas. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. "You're awake," Mom said, with an odd brightness in her voice. "Good. We didn't want to leave without saying goodbye." "Leave?" I tried to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through my side. What are you talking about?" My voice came out scratchy and thin. Dad gave me an awkward smile. "Don't worry, sweetheart. You just focus on resting. We're still going to Florence." I blinked, convinced the painkillers were messing with my hearing. "You're still going?" Mom nodded, adjusting her scarf. "We thought about canceling, but you wouldn't want us to waste all the planning you did. Everything's already booked, right?" I stared at her, my brain refusing to accept what I was hearing. "But I'm in the hospital. I paid for that trip." Vanessa stepped forward, her arms crossed. "We've been planning this for months, Naomi. You were supposed to watch the apartment while we were away. Obviously, you can't now, but that's not our fault." Not their fault. I felt like I was in some alternate reality, watching a scene unfold that didn't belong to me. "You're leaving me here," I whispered, "in a hospital bed less than 24 hours after I almost died." "It's not like we're abandoning you," Mom said. "The nurses will take great care of you. You're in good hands." "And Vanessa really needs this trip too," Dad added. "She's been through so much this year." Something inside me cracked. Not physically, though it might as well have been. I'd planned every detail of this trip. Booked the boutique hotel by the Arno River. Reserved the olive oil tasting for Mom. The Tuscany vineyard tour for Dad. Even bought first-class plane tickets so they could travel comfortably. And now they were walking out the door with their bags packed, leaving me here to recover alone. Vanessa walked to the foot of my bed and placed a set of keys on the tray beside me. "You'll need to find someone to water the plants and check the mail. Try to hire someone reliable." No one said anything else. "No, I love you. No, we'll check in." Just a few quick goodbyes, and then they were gone. My family disappearing through the hospital door, dragging pieces of my generosity behind them. The door clicked shut. The heart monitor kept beeping. And I lay there, completely undeniably alone. It didn't start this way. A year ago, I had just moved into my own apartment in downtown Seattle, tiny, overpriced, but entirely mine. It was the first time I felt like an adult. I had a stable job in digital marketing at a boutique agency called Creative Hive. My boss, Mr. Donovan, was gruff but fair, and I had finally earned enough respect to lead small campaigns on my own. I was building something for myself. Then Vanessa came undone. She had always been the golden child, older, prettier, louder, the one with the big dreams and even bigger opinions. She worked in PR for a luxury skincare brand and used to brag about how she was too valuable to ever get overlooked. until the day they promoted someone else. Someone younger, fresher, hungrier. I remember her bursting into my apartment, mascara running down her face, throwing her designer bag onto my couch like it had personally betrayed her. "They picked Sarah over me," she said, voice trembling. "Do you know how long I've been carrying that team? How hard I've worked?" I offered her a blanket, made her tea, let her vent. I thought it was just a bad day, a temporary blow to the ego. But the next morning she quit. Just like that. No backup plan, no savings, no strategy. Mom called me a few days later, whispering like she was hiding from reality. "Naomi, your sister is going through a hard time. She needs space, support," which of course meant money. At first, I helped without hesitation. She was my sister. Family steps up. I paid for her therapy, helped cover rent at our parents' house, ordered groceries when Mom said things were a little tight, but weeks turned into months. Therapy 4 times a week, organic groceries, boutique skincare for mental health. Meanwhile, I was living off microwave dinners and instant coffee just to make rent. "Vanessa's making progress," Mom would insist. "Her therapist says she just needs a bit more time." From where I stood, all I saw was a grown woman in yoga pants scrolling LinkedIn on the couch while rejecting job offers because they don't align with my personal brand. I started picking up freelance clients on the side, working late into the night, weekends, lunch breaks. My calendar bled red with deadlines. I was constantly exhausted, but I told myself it was temporary, that eventually Vanessa would find a job, that I could finally take a breath. Instead, the more I gave, the more they took. Dad started calling me for help with their electric bill. Mom needed a small loan to cover car insurance. Every week it was something new and somehow always urgent. I told myself they appreciated me, until the night I brought up the Florence trip. "I was thinking," I said over dinner one Sunday, "maybe we could take a vacation. Just the 3 of us. Get out of this cycle for a bit." Mom's eyes lit up instantly. "Italy? Oh, Naomi, you know I've always dreamed of trying real Italian olive oil." Dad grinned, already picturing the vineyards of Tuscany. Vanessa barely reacted. "I guess," she shrugged, "if you're paying." I laughed it off then, but in hindsight, that moment should have told me everything I needed to know. They expected me to fund the escape, and I did. Every detail of that trip was mine. Researched, booked, paid in full with my overtime hours and sacrificed weekends. It was supposed to be our reset button, our fresh start, but that was before the crash, before the hospital bed, before they walked out the door without me. The room was still, too still. They had been gone for 10, maybe 15 minutes. But time in a hospital moves differently, dragged out by the soft hum of machines, the antiseptic scent in the air, and the quiet reminder that your world has changed, even if everything around you remains the same. I lay there, staring at the ceiling tiles. They were a dull off-white, just slightly uneven. I traced the line between 2 of them with my eyes, again and again, as if following it would lead me back to some version of reality where this hadn't happened. But every breath, every throb in my ribs, reminded me that it had. They really left. Not just emotionally, no, that had started months ago, but physically, tangibly, visibly. 3 suitcases rolling out of the room. 3 people walking away without hesitation. I swallowed hard. The pain wasn't just in my body anymore. A nurse passed by my door, glanced at the monitor, and stopped. Her voice was soft. "Your heart rate's a little elevated, honey. Are you all right?" I looked at her, then down at my hands, still slightly shaking. Could I get my phone?" I asked. "It should be in my things." She nodded and returned a few minutes later with a small plastic bag. Inside was my phone, charger, and wallet. Everything I'd had in the car before the crash. My fingers closed around the phone like it was the only real thing anchoring me. It lit up immediately, still intact. My background, a photo of me, Mom, and Dad at last year's Christmas dinner flashed across the screen. We were all smiling. I stared at it for a long moment, then changed it to the default wallpaper. A blank, faceless blue. I opened my email. There it was. The Florence folder. Color-coded, perfectly labeled. A masterpiece of my own making. Flights. Hotels. Tour confirmations. Restaurant reservations. Every single detail. And just like that, something inside me clicked. If they saw me as nothing more than a travel planner, a credit card, a background presence they could silence and leave behind, then fine. I'd play the part. I tapped the first email. The boutique hotel near the Arno River. I had booked a suite with a terrace, thinking Mom would enjoy sipping espresso as the sun rose over Florence. I canceled it. Then came the olive oil tasting, the vineyard tour, the skip-the-line museum passes, the private walking guide. Each one disappeared with a few swipes and clicks, dissolving like sugar in rain. One by one, I erased the trip, and with each cancellation, a strange feeling washed over me. It wasn't satisfaction, not yet, but it was something close, like justice, or maybe clarity. The last thing left was the return flight. I hovered over the button for a moment, watching the screen breathe beneath my finger. I wondered how long it would take them to realize, up in the air, champagne in hand, imagining luxury, completely unaware they were flying into nothing. Then I tapped cancel. The confirmation email popped up instantly. No refund, of course. Just a single line. Your booking has been canceled. I put my phone on silent, laid it face down on the bedside table, closed my eyes. They'd figure it out soon enough. Maybe not today. Maybe not until they landed and tried to check into a hotel that no longer had their name. But eventually they would know. And maybe, just maybe, they'd finally feel what it was like to be left behind. I woke just past 3 a.m, not from pain, but from a sound, low, persistent, mechanical. It took me a moment to recognize the soft vibration coming from my bedside table, the familiar hum of a phone in distress. One buzz, then another, then many more in rapid succession. It was relentless, like a heartbeat racing out of rhythm. And I didn't need to check to know why. They had landed. My hand, still slightly weak from the 4, reached across the sheets until my fingers curled around the cold edge of the phone. The screen lit up instantly, revealing a stream of messages that poured in like a storm breaking through a window. Text after text blinked in, urgent, chaotic, as if the sender's panic could reach me faster through sheer volume. Mom's name appeared first. Naomi, the hotel says they don't have our reservation. Can you check? A minute later, Vanessa. What the hell, Naomi? We're standing in the lobby with our bags. This isn't funny. Then Dad, always more clipped, but no less commanding. Call us now. We need the tour confirmations. I stared at the screen for a moment, then placed the phone face down on the table beside me. It continued to buzz against the surface like an angry wasp, but I didn't touch it again. Not yet. By the time breakfast arrived, a tray of watery eggs and dry toast, I had 15 missed calls. By lunchtime, 42. That afternoon, somewhere between my second dose of painkillers and a visit from the nurse, I began keeping a tally on the back of my hospital meal menu. Missed calls, Mom 25, Dad 18, Vanessa 48, unread texts over 50, voicemails 21, all untouched. Oddly, I felt no anger. That emotion had burned itself out somewhere between the surgery and the moment they left me here without looking back. Now, all that remained was a strange kind of detachment. I read the messages like someone flipping through the last pages of a novel they've read before. Not because they didn't care, but because they already knew how it would end. Vanessa's words blinked on the screen. You're cruel and selfish. We're stranded in a foreign country. Mom followed closely. This isn't how you treat family. I am so disappointed in you. Family. That word again. So easily tossed around. as though it still meant something after everything they had done. I let out a dry, humorless laugh that tugged at the stitches along my side. It hurt, but I didn't mind. Pain, I had learned, could be honest. I was scrolling through yet another message from Vanessa, some long-winded complaint about how I'd ruined their vacation, when the door creaked open. Dr. Reynolds stepped inside, holding a mug of real coffee and a tablet tucked under one arm. His gaze moved from the tray of untouched food to the still-ringing phone on the nightstand. "Is that what I think it is?" he asked casually. I nodded once, not trusting myself to speak. He walked over, lifted the phone, and studied the name flashing on the screen. "Mom," again, before sighing softly. "Naomi," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You've had over 100 calls in less than a day. This is a hospital, not a call center." I lowered my eyes. "I'm sorry." I tried to ignore it. He didn't reply. Instead, he accepted the call and held the phone to his ear. "This is Dr. Reynolds from St. Luke's Medical Center. Naomi is recovering from major surgery and needs uninterrupted rest. I need to ask you to stop contacting her." Even from across the room, I could hear the shrill pitch of my mother's voice on the other end. "I don't care about any surgery. Put her on the phone. She needs to fix this." Dr. Reynolds stared at the device in his hand, a flicker of disbelief passing over his face before he hung up the call without another word. Then, with measured patience, he slipped the phone into the pocket of his white coat. "You'll get this back after your next round of medication," he said simply. "For now, focus on healing." And just like that, the buzzing stopped. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was sacred. For the first time since the accident, the room felt still, not abandoned, not lonely, just peaceful. The next morning passed like a fog. Without the constant buzzing of my phone, time blurred into a gentle quiet filled with soft footsteps in the hallway and the occasional murmur of nurses exchanging shift notes outside my door. I let myself rest, truly rest, for the first time in what felt like months. No calls, no responsibilities, no decisions to make. The world could spin without me for a while. By midday, a gentle knock tapped on the door. "Naomi," a voice called softly. I turned my head and blinked. It was Tara from sales, Tara with the impossibly bright red hair and too much eyeliner for company policy. She stepped into the room, cautiously, followed by Leo from accounting, who carried a tray holding 2 coffees from the cafe down the street. "We brought contraband," she whispered with a grin, holding up the steaming cup like a prize. "This place serves something that barely counts as coffee. We thought you could use the real stuff." I stared at them, stunned, not because I wasn't happy to see them, but because I hadn't expected anyone at all. "You didn't have to come," I said, my voice still scratchy from the breathing tube. Tara shrugged, dropping into the chair beside my bed like she did it every day. "Don't be ridiculous. You covered for me when I missed that pitch meeting last month. It's only fair I sneak caffeine into your hospital room now." Leo nodded in agreement. "Also, James tried to microwave fish in the break room yesterday. You're not allowed to abandon us yet." They stayed for nearly an hour, chatting about office gossip, the intern who accidentally replied all to a private HR email and how missed her. Donovan had taken over a client call himself and nearly tanked the entire proposal. I laughed, carefully so as not to rip my stitches, but it felt real. It felt good. The next day, Ella and Jonas showed up with a stack of magazines, crossword puzzles, and a miniature succulent in a little yellow pot. "To brighten your windowsill," Jonas said, placing it right beside the heart monitor. Ella brought a handwritten card, signed by nearly the whole team. "We made a schedule," she said proudly, flipping her tablet to show me a color-coded calendar. "Someone from the office will stop by every day. No one heals alone on our watch." My throat tightened, not from pain this time, but from something deeper. Gratitude, surprise, maybe even love, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need blood to be real. They kept showing up, day after day. Cousin Ava, who I hadn't seen in almost a year, came by with a pot of homemade soup and a bag of cinnamon rolls. "I saw your mom's Facebook post," she said gently, rolling her eyes. "Don't worry. Everyone in the family knows the truth." And then, the biggest surprise of all, 2 days later, a nurse walked in and said, "Naomi, there's someone on the line for you. He says he's your boss." "Mr. Donovan." His gruff voice echoed through the receiver, though there was a softness I had never heard from him before. "You scared the hell out of us," he said. "But listen, I've spoken with HR. The accident happened during working hours, so our insurance is covering everything. That includes your hospital bills and a recovery stipend. You don't need to worry about a thing." I didn't know what to say. For so long, I had believed support came only from those who shared my last name. I thought love meant sacrifice, meant giving endlessly until there was nothing left to give. But here, in this sterile hospital room filled with contraband coffee, tiny plants, and unexpected kindness, I realized something far more powerful. Love wasn't just about blood. It was about who showed up. It was late afternoon when it happened, just after my physical therapist left the room, leaving behind a small dose of pride and a little ache in my legs. I had taken 4 steps on my own. Not much by any standard, but to me it felt like Everest. I was about to sit back, enjoy the quiet, maybe sip the last of the lukewarm, contraband coffee on my nightstand when I heard it. The sound of wheels dragging across tile. Sharp. Familiar. Luggage. At first, I thought it must be someone else's visitors. But then came the voices. Loud. Familiar. Angry. The door burst open before I could even reach for the call button. My mother stormed in first, red-faced and still wrapped in her travel scarf. Behind her, Vanessa, dragging her designer suitcase, the very one I had bought her last Christmas. And finally, my father, hovering in the doorway like a shadow that wasn't quite sure if it wanted to be there. "How dare you?" Mom hissed, her voice shaking. Not from sadness, but from rage. "How dare you do this to us?" Vanessa followed, her arms flailing like broken wings. "You humiliated us. We were stuck in a dump with bed bugs. We had to eat from food stalls like animals. Do you have any idea what we've been through?" I didn't answer. I didn't even move. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching them spiral. Like someone watching a fire they didn't start finally burn itself out. Dad said nothing. He just stood there, shoulders hunched, avoiding my eyes. Nurse Kate, who had just returned to adjust my four, immediately stepped in front of them with the calm authority of someone who had dealt with far worse than entitled tourists. "Lower your voices," she said flatly. "This is a hospital, not a circus." But they didn't listen. Vanessa exploded again, pointing at my bed like it was offensive. "Look at her. Private room, clean sheets, 3 meals a day while we were suffering in a moldy Airbnb with no hot water." Something inside me shifted. Maybe it was the medication, dulling the usual fear. Or maybe it was the sheer absurdity of it all. Watching the people who left me behind walk into my hospital room and complain about their vacation, like I had somehow ruined their lives. I stood up, slowly, painfully, but I stood, suffering. My voice came out quiet but sharp, like the edge of a knife just pulled from ice. "You want to talk about suffering?" The room went still. "For the past year, I've worked myself to the bone paying your bills, covering the groceries, funding Vanessa's therapy. I sacrificed my time, my sleep, my sanity, while she rejected job offers because they didn't have unlimited vacation." Mom opened her mouth to speak. I raised my hand. "No, not this time. I planned this trip as a gift. I researched every detail, paid for every reservation. And then I got into a car accident, needed emergency surgery, and what did you do? You left. You took the sister who hasn't contributed a cent in over a year and abandoned me in a hospital bed." For a moment, just one fleeting second, I saw it. Shame, flickering behind Mom's eyes. But it disappeared almost as quickly as it came. "You can afford to go to Florence any time," she snapped. "This might have been our only chance." And then came the final blow. Vanessa! Arms folded, voice cutting. Besides, we figured you might end up disabled after the crash. And if that happened, you'd cancel everything. So I told them we should go while it was still paid for. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Mom looked at her in shock. Even Dad blinked, as if finally hearing something he hadn't let himself hear before. My hands trembled, not with weakness, but fury. My finger hovered over the call button. I pressed it. When the speaker crackled to life, I didn't hesitate. This is Naomi Carter in room 412. I need security, please. I have 4 unauthorized visitors I'd like removed, and I want them added to the restricted access list. Mom's face twisted. Naomi, don't you dare. But it was too late. Within seconds, 2 hospital security guards stepped into the room, flanking the doorway like sentinels of reason. This patient is recovering from surgery, one said. We're going to have to ask you to leave. I watched steady now as they were escorted out. Mom's protests echoed down the hall. Vanessa shouted about betrayal. Dad said nothing. He never did. And then they were gone. The morning after the storm, the room felt different. Lighter somehow, as if the air itself had been cleared of something heavy and unseen. No more shouting, no more buzzing phones, just soft footsteps in the hallway and the gentle whir of machines doing their quiet work. I sat up slowly, my body still sore but strangely alert. I wasn't floating anymore. The fog had lifted, replaced by something sharp, focused, resolute. There was no more room left for guilt, only clarity. When the nurse returned my phone, slipping it into my palm like she was handing back something delicate, I held it for a moment without turning on the screen. Just the weight of it in my hand felt symbolic. This was more than a device. It was a tether, a ledger, a weapon, a mirror. I powered it on. The notifications poured in. Over 100 missed calls, dozens of texts. The last voicemail from my mother was time-stamped at midnight. I didn't listen. Instead, I opened my banking app. My fingers moved slowly, deliberately, no hesitation, no doubt. First, I opened the autopay tab. There they were, like ghosts on a ledger. Carter Family Grocery, transfer, monthly. Vanessa's therapy, fund biweekly. Utility support, electric, gas, water. I canceled each one by one. No more silent generosity. No more financial apologies for things I never broke. When I reached the last one, Mom's emergency medical fund, I paused. For years, I had told myself that was necessary, that I was being responsible, being good. But now, looking at it, all I saw was a child's attempt to earn love through money. I canceled that too. The confirmation emails stacked neatly in my inbox like receipts from an exorcism. And just like that, something uncoiled inside me. Some ancient, invisible thread snapped. And with it, the guilt, the weight, the silent question I had been carrying for far too long. Is it my job to keep this family alive? No. I set the phone down. 3 weeks later, I was discharged. The hospital gave me a folder of aftercare instructions, a small bouquet from the front desk, and one last check-in from Dr. Reynolds, who simply said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." When I stepped into my apartment, I nearly cried. It was clean, warm, familiar. The sunlight hit the hardwood floor, just right. My fridge had been stocked, Tara and Ella, no doubt. Fresh flowers bloomed on the kitchen counter, soft pink and white against the pale tile backsplash. There was a note taped to the cabinet in Tara's handwriting. "Welcome back to the world. Don't answer your phone unless it's us." I laughed. Not a tired, broken laugh. A real one. No drama. No financial pleas. No guilt hanging in the corners of my home like cobwebs. Just silence. Beautiful, golden silence. I unpacked slowly over the next few days. Did my physical therapy. Answered a few emails from work. Easing gently back into a world that had waited for me instead of punishing me for needing time. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't cleaning up anyone else's mess. I wasn't managing anyone's emotions, anyone's finances, anyone's expectations. I was just living. And I liked it. Nearly a month had passed since I left the hospital, and life had begun to settle into something that resembled peace. Not perfect, not always easy, but mine. The mornings were quiet. My apartment was filled with light and the faint scent of fresh basil from a tiny windowsill plant Tara had gifted me. I was back to working part-time, remotely, gently easing myself into the rhythm of deadlines and client calls. The world outside spun on, and for once, I didn't feel the need to chase it. Then, one evening, as I was scrolling through emails on my laptop, a message from my cousin Ava appeared. "Ava, you might want to check Facebook. Aunt Linda posted something, and it's going viral, but not the way she hoped." My stomach dropped slightly, not because I was afraid, but because I knew exactly what kind of story my mother would tell. Still, I opened the app, and there it was, a photo of my parents standing outside a rundown building, grainy, poorly lit, no doubt meant to provoke pity. Above it, a long, emotionally charged caption: "My daughter has abandoned us in our time of need. After all we've done for her, after the love and sacrifices of raising her, she left us stranded overseas, penniless and alone. My poor Vanessa still can't find work. Our bills are piling up, and Naomi refuses to speak to us. We're heartbroken. We just want our family back." The reactions had already started to pile up. Dozens of sad emojis, comments from her friends, church ladies, distant cousins, old coworkers, chimed in one after another. "How terrible! You deserve so much better. Such an ungrateful child. Family should always come first. I'll pray for her heart to soften." I stared at the screen, unsurprised but still unsettled. It didn't hurt exactly, no, not anymore, but it left a bitter taste in my mouth. Not because she had twisted the truth, but because I had once believed she wouldn't. I was about to close the app when a new comment notification popped up. Then another, and another. The first one was from Ava. Ava Carter. "Linda, seriously? You left Naomi in a hospital bed after a car accident to go on a vacation she paid for. You didn't even ask how she was doing. Everyone in the family knows what really happened." Then came my aunt on Dad's side, then a cousin from Florida, then Ella from work, God bless her. Ella Myers, "Is this the same daughter who paid for your trip, your groceries, and Vanessa's therapy for over a year? Because that doesn't sound like abandonment to me." The comments kept coming. Not angry, not vulgar, just calm, direct truth. "Naomi was more of a parent to your family than you were. You don't get to call it abandonment when you were the ones who walked out first. Funny how you remembered she was your daughter only when the money stopped." It was beautiful, not loud, not messy, just truth rising like sunlight over fog. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The people who mattered already knew. The rest? Let them sit with it. I closed the app, and for the first time in years, I felt no urge to defend myself. It was a quiet Sunday morning when I finally opened the old email folder labeled Florence. For weeks, I had let it sit in my inbox untouched, just a relic of a trip that never happened. A trip that once symbolized everything I thought my family needed and everything I thought I could fix. But now, as the sun streamed through the window and cast soft golden lines across my kitchen counter, I looked at it differently, not as a reminder of what had been taken, but as a blueprint of what could still be reclaimed. I clicked on the folder. The hotel I'd chosen all those months ago, Boutique Arno, with its ivy-covered balconies and view of the river, was still listed in my search history. I refreshed the page. A single room, for months from now, was available. I booked it without hesitation. Then came the tours, the olive oil tasting in the Tuscan hills, the vineyard walks, the small, private cooking class tucked in the corner of a family-owned trattoria. I booked them all, not for 3 people this time, just for me. There was something deliciously quiet about doing it alone. No compromises, no budgeting for others, No worrying if someone would complain about walking too far or eating too late. Every moment was mine to shape, every decision mine to make. When the final confirmation email arrived in my inbox, I stared at it for a long time. The subject line read, Benvenuta a Firenze. Welcome to Florence. I smiled. That evening, I closed my laptop and walked over to the window. The city lights of Seattle blinked softly in the distance, reflected in the wet pavement below. Somewhere in another version of the story, I would have been in Florence months ago, carrying my mother's bags, adjusting Vanessa's complaints, trying to force a smile for a family that didn't know how to love without strings attached. But that version no longer existed. I wasn't managing anyone's feelings anymore. I wasn't financing anyone's lifestyle. I wasn't hoping, silently, to be appreciated for doing things no one asked me to do, but everyone expected. My phone buzzed again, another unknown number. Probably another attempt to pull me back into the spiral. I didn't even glance at it. I turned the phone off, slid it into the drawer, and returned to the window. 3 more months. 3 more months, and I would be standing on the cobblestone streets of Florence, not as a daughter trying to hold her family together, but as a woman who had finally learned that walking away isn't weakness. It's the first step toward freedom.